My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins and the grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. We all remember how in the heart of COVID last spring, there were all sorts of restrictions and much of the world was shut down, depending on where you live. Perhaps that shutdown came earlier or later. But one of the most tragic elements was the fact that nursing homes had to shut down completely and family members were not able to visit their loved ones. I remember being very struck by an article I read in the Wall Street Journal, which I highly recommend, about a man named Jack Eckles and his wife, Jerry. When nursing homes began barring visitors to keep the coronavirus out, Jack Eckles decided to move in. Hillcrest Nursing Home in Durham, North Carolina, had turned him away on March 12th when he arrived as usual to spend much of the day with his wife, Jerry, who suffers from Alzheimer's disease. So he returned the next day with a suitcase of clothes, books, medications, and his computer. Hillcrest had agreed to rent him a single room in its assisted living area so that he could care for Geraldine, who is 91. He isn't allowed to walk around the 154-bed facility, except to Jerry's room, where he feeds her, and sometimes to the lobby, where he can see family members through the windows. Meals in the facility's spacious dining room and its festive monthly parties remain paused. Hillcrest sometimes feels like a prison, he says, but he won't move out and leave Jerry until it reopens to visitors. We're married, he said. I want to be with her. She took care of me for 70 years, and now it's my turn. Hillcrest nurses say his efforts have made a huge difference in his wife's health. That's something we can't do. We haven't been with her for 70 years, said Olivia Jacobs, a Hillcrest dietitian. She and others working at the facility say Jack never complains and is unfailingly gentle. He's always having a good day. He's always happy to see her. He's with his love, and that's where he wants to be. What an image. Jesus, what a beautiful, beautiful image of a husband and wife who are in love. Jerry, this woman who suffers from Alzheimer's, is not left abandoned, but Jack decides to move in to this quote-unquote prison to be with her day and night and to care for her. Jesus, we want to pray today about the sacrament of marriage, the institution of marriage, an institution that is often questioned, which is often misunderstood. And even in your time, Lord, it seems like those around you are questioning whether marriage is even worth it, whether marriage is something that should be defended. We read in the Gospel today from Matthew, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any cause whatever?" Jesus said in reply, "Have you not read that from the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and said, 'For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh.' So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, man must not separate." They said to him, "Then why did Moses command that the man give the woman a bill of divorce and dismiss her?" He said to them, "Because of the hardness of your hearts, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, unless the marriage is unlawful, and marries another, commits adultery. Jesus, you use this beautiful phrase, they are no longer two, but one flesh. A man and a woman that come together in matrimony form a single thing, one flesh, one beautiful reality. And Jack and Jerry understood this very well. When Geraldine is suffering from Alzheimer's, Jack does not leave her side. She cared for him for much of his life. He cares for her. They are one flesh, and not even the walls of a nursing home will separate them. Jesus, when you deal with this topic, the topic of marriage, you speak with great clarity, with a forcefulness that is jarring. It's jarring for us to read this, as it was for the Pharisees in those days, because it's a very powerful message, but also, we could say, extremely radical and a little bit off-putting. But at the same time, Lord, your understanding and your presentation of marriage is incredibly positive. You provide a breathtakingly beautiful image of what married life is all about, this one flesh union, brought together by God himself. What God has brought together, man must not separate. Jesus, you want the sexual act to be lived within marriage between one woman and one man for life and open to life. What a beautiful thing. A beautiful thing that this culture that we live in today has so often forgotten or rejected. This notion of marriage as permanent and exclusive is the original plan that God had for us from the very beginning. For Jesus, for you, Lord, sexuality is something sacred. It is something beautiful. It is not a commodity to be bandied about. It's not a game. It is upheld by the church as a great gift, which should be revered and properly integrated into our lives. Lord, help us to understand this, because it's difficult. We saw this, we could say, this embrace between this elderly couple there in the nursing home, staying together to the very end. There's another beautiful example, which I recommend you to look up on the Opus Dei website. It's a series of videos called Marriage, a Great Adventure, which features two Argentinians, Sole and Juanpi. And the husband said, "In my marriage, my wife has always been not just a great help, but really a pillar for me. She has always been a support. Many times when we get to the end of the day, we simply embrace each other. We give each other a hug. We give each other strength when there are problems. And God has never abandoned us or forgotten us." We say that marriage is very beautiful, and it is, but it's also full of difficulties. It's full of challenges, many calls to sacrifice and renunciation of our plans, our independence, our possible futures. That same documentary about Sole and Juanpi, it shows how they hit a wall. At one point, the wife says, "I'm going to take these kids on this vacation with him, but when we return, we're separating." Right? There was a moment where the marriage was really on the rocks. Marriage is an adventure, and there are bumps along the way. But Jesus, you give each married couple the grace to be faithful. Fidelity in marriage, one person for life. It's a tall order. It's a very tall order. And we can see how the apostles balk at this. Right? The apostles say, "Lord, if that is the case of a man with his wife, it's better not to marry." And we can hear people saying that today, reacting with that same kind of skepticism as the apostles, with that jaded cynicism. One person for life and open to life? If that's the case, it's better not to marry. And we seek a way around it. Well, Moses allowed for a divorce. And Jesus, you point out precisely why that was the case, because of the hardness of your hearts. Other translations say, because you were unteachable. The Jews were unteachable. They were closed to the truth of marriage. Well, Lord, help us not to be unteachable, but rather to be teachable, to be open to your word, to be attentive to what you're trying to teach us with the reality of marriage. Open our hearts, Lord. Help us to be willing to embrace the beauty of marriage and all of its consequences. Marriage is an adventure. It's an adventure of self-giving. What a beautiful thing. Wouldn't we much rather prefer this adventure of self-giving to a life of self-seeking, to a life of selfishness? Lord, help us to discover our vocation, whatever it is, and we ask you, Jesus, to help us to revere the institution of marriage just as you did. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations that you've communicated to me in this meditation. I ask your help in putting them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.